Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or possibly good evening, boys and girls, as this is a children's story reading, which is just long enough for a bedtime story before you go to bed. Now, when Mummy or Daddy says go to bed, that's what you do. Okay, so you've been allowed to have a 15 to 20 minute story, which I'm now using a lot of the time off by explaining all the ground rules to you, but that means that I can get more mileage out of the actual readings I've done, because I'll do this, I'll repeat this bit over and over again at the beginning of every clip. So, without further ado, we'll go to the next thrilling installment of Jimmy and the Pink Diamond. Diamonds are a bird's best friend. Just then, Anton burst through the cat flap on the front door of the cafe and shrieked, "Oi, oi, enormous catastrophe! Yonder rover and weird man put grandfather in kitchen cupboard. Also Genya was put in small cage. They got plan to sell pink diamond and kill grandfather, but they want to keep Genya so they can sell him to Dutch circus, because he is большой. Excuse me, he's giant bird. We must hurry. They will get lots of money for Genya and circus." Anton was out of breath because he had flown back very fast. "No time to lose," cried Buck. "I'll get old Buttercup. We've got to add more muscle." Buck raced out to find Buttercup, who lived down the street. He came back right away, riding on the back of a gigantic, hairy grey dog that was the size of a pony. The dog's mouth was big enough to swallow a child's head. "Arf!" said the beast sweetly. He gave Buck a sloppy, wet kiss on his head. Jimmy didn't have time to be scared of him. "Follow me, boys, I know the way," cried Buck. They all ran as fast as they could into the street, with Anton flying right above them. "The tram, we'll ride the tram, it's faster," yelled Buck sharply. "This way, boys." They raced through the long street all the way to the nearest tram stop. The driver and the conductor were busy with a complaining passenger, so they didn't see the animals get on board. Bucky's gang moved to the back of the tram so they would be less noticeable. It was difficult not to notice Buttercup, because he was so large and vicious looking and kept growling at people. "Keep your mouth shut till we get off. Jim, Anton, hide under the seats," whispered Buck. He was nervous about the conductor. "We can't let them see us or they throw us off the tram." Everyone except Buttercup crept under the seats and kept quiet. "Hey, Butters, give us a bark when we get to Yander Rover's house, will ya? Okay? Good boy," whispered Buck, and he patted the dog. They reached their stop after about 15 minutes. Buttercup gave a horrific growling bark, which terrified everyone again. All the passengers rushed away from him and took their seats in the front. The back doors opened and the animals were the first to leap out. Buck, Jimmy and Buttercup trotted down the main shopping street as if it were a normal day out, with Anton circling above them. The shoppers scattered right and left, screaming with fear. If they hadn't done so, they would have been knocked over by the ferocious dog. It was easy to guess his intentions by the way he snarled, foamed a bit at the mouth, and barked at people who got in his way. He never really bit anyone, but he always growled and showed his teeth to those who came too close to Buck. Otherwise he tried to behave politely. The big dog loved his cat. He was devoted to Buck and would lick him whenever he could catch him sitting down. Buck allowed it because they were friends, and after all, who could say no to such a monstrous hound? Trouble is brewing at Jan's house. Buck knew the way to Aloysius' apartment like the back of his paw. He'd been going there to work for Yander Rover and the Diamond Expert for 2.5 years. His job was simple. Buck was a cat burglar. Aloysius and Jan had taught him to climb through an open window, go through a cat flap, or even slide down the chimney to get inside a house. Who looks twice at a cat on a roof? Once in, he would open the door from the inside by jumping up to the doorknob, twisting it, and then letting his accomplices walk in. It worked every time. The police were always baffled by the lack of clues left at the scene of the crime. The only real evidence they had was that in every room a pungent, skunk-like smell lingered in every house after every robbery. The police often found a great big paw print or an orange hair, but they didn't have cat footprints on file. The Dutch police believed that it was the work of one man. They nicknamed him the Skunk because of the awful smell. Aloysius always wore gloves, of course, and had soft felt circus slippers on his feet, so he wouldn't leave any trace of a shoe print. He would only steal small and valuable items like fine jewellery, cameras and expensive mobile phones. The gang always got in and out quickly and did their work so cleverly that the police had never been able to catch them at it, and it seemed to them that they never would get their man. Buck suddenly turned off from the main shopping avenue into a side street and motioned to his companions to hide round the corner and wait for him there. Jan and Aloysius wouldn't suspect anything if he came in alone. He walked casually through the cat flap into the front door as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Jan and Aloysius weren't in. Buck heard an awful racket in the bedroom and went to investigate. It was Genya. His giant body had been stuffed into a medium-sized round birdcage, which was far too small for him. He couldn't even sit down properly, so he resorted to bashing the bars with his head and roaring Russian swear words. Genya was so deformed by the cage that he looked like an angry black bull. Aloysius had opened the bottom part of the cage and propped him that way. The big bird was much too large to go through the cage door, and now he was truly trapped inside. "Oi, my head hurts," moaned Genya in a soft voice when he saw Buck standing in the doorway. Aloysius had hit him on the head with a broom handle to keep him quiet. Genya started to rattle the cage bars again. It was teetering on the edge of a small table. If he could just shake it over the edge, perhaps the bottom part would spring open and he could get out. Buck understood the situation at once and ran out of the room to tell his mates the coast was clear. Genya could stay put for the time being. "Stupid idiot! Durak! Get me out of here! Dumb cat! Cat! No, wait, don't go! Buck! Idiot cat! Help me!" "Wait, we'll come back for you later, friend," whispered Buck, leaving poor Genya alone again in the bedroom. The mad raven was beating his head on the cage door and swearing to murder a certain ginger tomcat if he ever got out. "What's that awful smell?" asked Jimmy, trying not to breathe it in. "Why, it smells like a big dirty bottom in here. What can it be? It's everywhere." Buck laughed. "Well, that's Mr. Aloysius' special stink. He don't wash himself too good. Maybe just once a year. He don't believe in soap. He don't smell himself, see? Whee, what a stinker. Buttercup, you stand guard at the door." Buck had opened the door to the ground floor apartment to let them in. "Where is Grandfather?" cried Jimmy and Anton at the same time. They heard a faint scratching sound in the kitchen and found Boris shut up in a cabinet. When they opened the door, Grandfather shuffled into the light, blinking and rubbing his eyes with one wing. His little reading glasses hung halfway over his old beak. "We must hurry, boys. I heard them talking. They said they were going to the Brown Horse to celebrate. I think it was about 2 hours ago. They could be back here any moment. We have to get poor Genya out and take the money away from this house. I don't know how much they got for the pink diamond, but what I do know is that there is lots and lots of money. Hurry, boys." Boris tried to gather his thoughts together. "Before they shut me up, I saw where they hid the money, and it looks like a whole sack full of banknotes." "Where'd they stash it, Grandfather?" asked Buck. He knew all of the best hiding places in the robber's house. He also knew exactly where Aloysius kept the key to the second bedroom, that Jan and Aloysius used to store the stolen property. Boris laughed. "You may not believe it, but I think they put the money in that old refrigerator. It is, how you say, cold cash. Ha. "Oh yeah, that's their favourite place. Before I forget, the key to the bedroom where they keep the loot is in the biscuit tin." Buck grinned and left the room. Jimmy called out to Anton, who was trying to help Genya. "Hey you, Anton, come in here. We have another refrigerator to open." "Yes, sir. Right away, cried Anton as he flew into the kitchen. While Anton and Jim were busy opening the fridge, Buck ran back into the bedroom. Genya was frantically trying to throw himself against the bars of the cage. When I am out of cage, I will eat you, durak. I make big cat sandwich out of you. Then I will cut sandwich in half. One half orange cat and one half bread, bellowed the furious giant. Keep your pants on, will you big nutcase, muttered Buck as he jumped back on the table. What you call me? You talk to me? When I finish eating you, you will be half cat, half nothing. I only eat half of you and leave tail. I take tail back to Russia and nail it on the wall. Out, out, out. Genya want to get out. Genya, get a hold of yourself. We're trying to help you. We're all friends here. Just calm down, said Jimmy, who had come in to help Buck. He'd never seen Genya so angry before, and it scared him more than he wanted to admit. He and Buck managed to push the cage off the table. It landed with an almighty crash on the bedroom floor. The bottom of the birdcage flew off, and Genya staggered out. His body was stiff and sore from being forced into that small space. His head still hurt, where he had been whacked with the broom handle. He put the tip of his wing to his beak and whispered, "Shh, shh, quiet. You make very big noise now. Oi, what will the neighbors say?" "Shh, shh." Genya glanced at Jimmy rather sheepishly. "Genya very sorry," he said, hanging his large head. "Real sorry. Thanks for getting me out of cage," he added, looking guiltily at Buck. The red cat just gave him a friendly swat on the back and replied, "That's all right, Genya. I've been shut up many times and it ain't no fun." There was a loud whoop of joy as Boris and Anton found the money. Aloysius had thrown it into a dirty pillowcase and hidden it in the freezer. It was one of his best hiding places. "I call this cold cash," laughed Grandfather. They gave the pillowcase to Buttercup, who took it outside and buried it behind a big bush by the street for safekeeping. "We must call the police," suggested Boris. "Where is the telephone?" Mobile phones were scattered all around the living room, so he only had to find one that was still working. Jimmy was amazed. Grandfather was going to talk to a real policeman? "I didn't know you could do it. I mean, talk to a man." "I've only talked to the old engineer in Moscow about his dacha, and that was just 1 or 2 words at a time. Yes, no, that sort of thing, nothing as difficult as this. What do I say? I don't really know if I can do it." "Aha!" crowed Jimmy triumphantly. I know, he said, raising his paw. I've seen it lots of times on TV. You can do it, Grandfather. Listen, Granny watches murder mysteries on TV. I usually sit with her when she solves a crime. I know just what to say, Grandfather." He was jumping up and down with excitement. "Tell me quickly, son. We don't have much time left. What is the number? Does Amsterdam have such an emergency number?" "Yes, 112, Jim replied. "Next you've got to say, 'I want to report a robbery.' Don't forget you've got to tell them the address and ask them to hurry. You should speak English. Dutch people speak English very well, that is, most of the time." Grandfather nodded uncertainly and asked, Buck, what is the address here?" He asked it in Annamish. "Church Street, 104, ground floor," Bucky replied as he came back into the living room. "Thank you, Buck," said Grandfather. His entire body trembled as he used his beak to dial the police. "I want to report a robbery," he squeaked in a high and nervous voice. "Calm down, madam," said a friendly woman's voice on the other end of the line. "What is the address?" she asked. "Oh, I see, by the shopping street. Yes, I can understand you very well, madam. We'll get there as fast as we can. Now don't worry, madam, and remember, please don't touch anything."
За все тебя благодарю.